That's it. Who's gonna open the door? You guys? Oh, when I start?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask everyone please to be standing and to remain standing until the end of the national anthem.
Bata semua nak amai. Bata papa nak amai. Karyawan nak ya. Semua kita nak tenu. Turau aramai. Aramai, aramai. Aramai atam. Aramai ini. Ini kata kata apa? Iki pepe ya kau. Aku nak mau. Uara tu aku nak beriaran. Itu yang kita main itu awal terjadi. Kau main kau kini main jaya terbiar. Orang mau, entan, lagi lawan entan terjadi apa? Orang main, orang main.
Thank you, Senate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please remain upstanding as we sing the national anthem of the Cook Islands, performed by the Cook Islands National Arts Theatre.
Te atua maue, ko koe rai te pu, o te parenu ware, a karongo mai, I tomato nei reo, te kapi
Thank you, Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I now have pleasure to call up the Diocesan Bishop of the Apostolic Church, our Bishop Tuta Ipere, to open us up with a puri.
Greetings, welcome, and praise the Lord to everyone gathered in this auditorium this morning. Allow me to take us straight to our brief devotion for the morning. I read in last Saturday's newspaper where this conference has been advertised, assuming leadership role with the theme strengthening performance, making a difference in the lives of Pacific people. I have therefore chosen Matthew 5:14 to 16. You are the light of the world, a city that is set on the hill and cannot be hid. No one lighteth a candle and put it under the bushel, but on the stand to give light to all in the house. So let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works that you do and glorify your Father who is in heaven. I have chosen for a theme, no man is an island. We who live in these tiny, small island nations of the South Pacific are disjointed, distant, isolated, alienated, disconnected by having been geographically located, islands surrounded, locked away by the huge, vast, and massive South Pacific Ocean. Gone are the days and centuries of years when our ancient forefathers, by their acquisition of oral traditional maritime navigational knowledge and skills by studying movements of ocean currents and wind directions and migration of birds, the phases of the sun, the moon, and the stars, hence traversed and circumnavigated this vast Moana Nui or Kiva we call to settle into these unknown, unreached, unheard of, unimagined lands in the distance in existence. Fast forward to our days, we have bigger, better, faster boats, ships, and airplanes, plus the onset of high-tech, sophisticated internet telecommunications with outer space literally littered by satellites, reaching and connecting anyone and anywhere in almost anywhere and anyone in this entire universe. No man is an island. We cannot survive on our own. We needed each other. We're going to find out and discover if there are people outside us, so we don't form a narrow-minded brain that we are the only one in existence. Thank God there's a word, a phrase which finally consummated everything. It's such a small world. It's a small world at long last. How did it become small? We made it small because of the meetings that we have held, the conferences, the forum, the summits, connecting, engaging, dialoguing, integrating, interaction, nations and nations and people and ethnicities and races and statuses like we are holding here in Rarotonga, and we're blessed to be hosting the second of such meeting. It takes everybody to make a world, and everyone matters. As we all matter to God, so should everyone matter to each other. We have a common expression. God is good. All the time, God is good. And for goodness sake, for God's sake, let's make it good by making things change, showcasing the best of ourselves for the good of all. No one can survive on their own. We need each other. The knowledge that we have, you didn't have it. We had teachers along the way until we reached universities and graduated with degrees. People invested in our knowledge, understanding, and experience. Lord, have mercy. Save us not to be, hallelujah, exclusive, but inclusive. The most inclusive person that has walked this earth was Jesus Christ. He came at the time when Israel thought they were the only people in the world and God only belonged to them. Until when he died on the cross on Calvary, he tore down and ripped from top to bottom that curtain that separated man to the holiness of God. He paid with his own blood, freely, willingly. And in the perplexity and the confusion of humanity, he even cried out, Father, forgive them, they do not know what they do. Bowed his head and died. It is finished. At 33 years, he finished his task. He came and showed how to love, how to live in peace, how to interact, and tore down the wall of separation, hostility, partiality, hypocrisy, relegation, racism. All that, he planted it and tore it right down. Galatians chapter 3 and verse 27, 28 there it says, as many of you as have been baptized into Jesus Christ have put on Christ. There is therefore neither Greek nor Jew. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. All are one in Jesus Christ. And you are all sons and daughters of Abraham and receive the promise of blessing to everybody. As chairman of the seabed mineral of the advisory committee here in the Cook Islands, we'll be coming to visit you in due time. We're doing public consultation all over the islands to the northern group and the southern group. We're looking to the diaspora, to New Zealand, Australia. Hallelujah. With tons. You can sleep, wake up, sleep, wake up. It's still spread. On top of each other. Nodules, manganese. Why did God put it down there, that deep? Why did he put oil in the Arab nation? Why did he put gold in Bougainville? Why did he put minefields in Australia, New Zealand? No country, no nation, no people God has not blessed. If not natural resources, people, environment, and so forth. But it's for us to share to all. There is a saying, we have the means to feed all, we lack only the willingness to share. So, Father, please help me to discover for the first time in human history, I see a white teeth in a black face. I see a white eyes, hallelujah, in somebody. Please help me not to see, hallelujah, color, but to see persons whom Jesus died and shed his blood. None should perish or come to repentance. So let your light so shine before men that they may see the good works. The good works. Good is equated God. God is equated good. There is none good, Jesus said, but God. We can be in God, be in Jesus. We can do good and better, bring the world to a better life, sustainable prosperity for everybody. Not just for me, not just for you, not just for that status up there and missed this and the low caste people. Lord, have mercy. Thank you for bringing this conference here. I pray God to bless this conference. Now, beautiful Mama Helen Clark, I salute and honor you for your term in office, Prime Minister of New Zealand and of the Cook Islands. Heavenly Father, thank you for your message to us today, that you are the light of the world. Those that follow after you receiveth do not walk in darkness, but receiveth the light of life. And we too are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. We don't light and put it under the bushel, but on the stand to give light to all in the house. Let our light so shine before all people that they may see the good works we do and glorify our Father who is in heaven. We can have a better world than what we are seeing today, but there's still time, because you're a God of season, you're a God of time. Time is of an essence. Hallelujah. Redeeming the time, for the days are evil. Forgive us all. Bless them, bless their families they have left behind. Grant the few days they are in Rarotonga, that they may have a very fruitful, very beneficial, and good discussions and dialogue one with another. Your name be praised, Jesus our Savior, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, dear Bishop. Thank you, Tatu Katotua. Kia ora ko o Tatu Katotua, I te aroa mātou teto. With those words, I greet you and welcome you to this place. We also acknowledge, I apologize, I missed the presence of our High Commissioner from Australia, Your Excellency Phoebe. Kia ora na kia koe, welcome. And also to the custodians of this land, to Wakatini and your family. Kia ora na koe tama, pera katoa tō tātou uiari ki te taimai, karika e pera kia koe tino mana. Ke tātou katoa kia ora na. Our Prime Minister, kia ora to you, sir. Welcome back after a very long trip. I certainly hope that you've caught up with some rest, and also to the right, Honourable Helen Clark. It's been a little while since we had you here. It is nice to have your company again. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that have braved the airwaves to be here with us this morning, kia ora na tātou katoa on behalf of the Uiariki of the Cook Islands, on behalf of our government and a member of the opposition. Also acknowledge the sneaky arrival of our Kaumaiti Nui, the president of our House Whakariki. Kia ora na kia koe e tama. I welcome you on behalf of the traditional leaders of this country, as well as our Prime Minister and his caucus, and the members of Parliament, as well as the leader of the opposition. To the members of the Crown that are here with us this evening, kia ora na, this morning, kia ora na tātou katoa. I take this time to acknowledge those in the House, especially those on the Board of Governors for PASAI. Mr. John Ryan, the Secretary General of the Office of the Auditor General of New Zealand. Kia ora e tama, welcome. Esa Lameko Pautoa, the CEO of PASAI, all the governing body members, the IDI partners, PASAI members, and donor partners. Kia ora na tātou katoa. It is now my pleasure to call up to the podium our Prime Minister, the Honourable Mark Brown, to say a few words to us and to open this morning's program. Thank you, sir.
Kia ora na tātou katoa e te roa mātou te tua i te popongi nei. Tō tātou papa ora me tua i te rawi, tā tātou ākonoanga i te popongi. Kia ora na koe, te riri nui i tā au karere i te popongi nei. Tō tātou uiariki te roto pui e tātou kaumaiti nui. Tō uariki tino mana karika Wakatini. Kia ora na koutou e tō mata keinanga. Te ronga mana i roto pui e tātou, ui mata i po ui rangatira. Kia ora na. I te mata o te kawamani o Aotearoa Nutireni, Honourable Tui Dius, te rakatoa, te mata o te kawamani o Aotearoa, Phoebe, kia ora na kōrua. Te omem paramanji roto pui e tātou, te tua o te kawamani be rakatoa, tō arataki o te tua ka tantano, kia ora na tātou katoa. A warm Cook Islands greetings and welcome to all of our esteemed visitors and delegates for this conference, the 25th PASAI Conference, the annual gathering of the Pacific Association of Supreme Audit Institutions. And of course, a very warm and special welcome to our esteemed visitor, our guest, the Right Honourable Helen Clark, our keynote speaker for this morning. Of course, Helen is no stranger to the Cook Islands. And I recall to the 2001 Joint Centenary Declaration, which commemorated the 100th year of the annexation of the Cook Islands to New Zealand in 1901. She was a signatory to that Joint Centenary Declaration, along with our Prime Minister at the time, Sir Terepai Mawate, signifying the sovereign independence of the Cook Islands after that 100-year period. So it's wonderful to have you here, Helen. I know you've been trekking around during the weekend, see some of the sites, but it's great to have you here this morning. To all of our delegates, as I said, from around the Pacific, we're really pleased to have you here. Welcome to the island of Rarotonga. Welcome to the Cook Islands. And also, before I go on, I'd just like to congratulate our own Director of Audit Cook Islands, Desmond Wilden, and your team for hosting this event here. You know, we have become quite famous in the Cook Islands for hosting a number of events and conferences and congresses. I'm sure when our nomination was put forward as a destination for hosting this particular conference, I think there was quite a bit of support from what I hear, as there usually is, regardless of what the conference is. The theme for this year's conference, as mentioned by our bishop this morning, is strengthening performance, making a difference in the lives of Pacific people. Our supreme audit associations across the Pacific achieve this in several different ways. The SAIs ensure that there is accountability for how public money is used. They hold government agencies accountable for their financial performance, and they also help those same agencies achieve better results and outcomes in areas that matter for Pacific people. In this way, our Pacific SAIs build trust and support amongst our Pacific peoples. As a member of PASAI, our own Cook Islands Audit Office is here for the benefit of Cook Islanders. Cook Islands Audit works to ensure that Cook Islanders have trust and confidence in their government by supporting good governance, accountability, transparency, and integrity. They work with partners across the Cook Islands public sector to build this culture of accountability and transparency, helping to ensure that elected officials are acting in the best interests of our people. Assisting our public sector agencies in the effective, efficient, and economic use of resources, our Cook Islands audit team is responsible for auditing our government financial statements and for the annual financial audit of 61 government entities. Their vision is of a high-performing and trusted Cook Islands public sector that works in the best interests of Cook Islanders, leaning into values of transparency, fairness, quality, integrity, and trust. Currently, working collaboratively with Parliament and key stakeholders to update and strengthen our legal frameworks, Cook Islands Audit seeks to achieve greater independence and further enhance a culture of transparency and accountability across the Cook Islands public sector. For those who've been listening closely, I'm sure you've all been listening closely, you'll have no doubt noted by now that in the last couple of minutes I've been speaking, I have already referred to the values of accountability and transparency several times. But this is only because these two concepts lie at the heart of what SAIs are all about, ensuring that the public sector is held to account, and in doing so, establishing a relationship of trust between government agencies and the people they serve. And it is only with true financial and operational independence can SAIs properly fulfill these key mandates. Audit independence is crucial to ensuring that each SAI and the work that they do is credible and trusted. As countries and economies move towards improved and increasingly sophisticated systems of public financial management, driven by the latest technologies, the crucial role of the Director or the Auditor General in providing independent audits and peer reviews to substantiate audit quality must receive equal focus. Independence is defined as free from outside control, not subject to another authority, and not depending on another for livelihood or subsistence. So an auditor must maintain independence from the audit entity to uphold the objectivity and integrity of the audit process. This is the basis of the public's trust in their work. Furthermore, the work of the Auditor General should give both Parliament and the public an independent assurance that public entities are presenting a true and honest account of their operations and their performance. There's a lot more I could say about the work of our own Cook Islands Audit Office and their fellow Pacific SAIs represented here today, and the PASAI itself, that esteemed organization that is the reason we're all here today. However, the timing of this meeting is pertinent for the Cook Islands. As a small island developing state, our aspirations fall short of our capacity to make government agencies fully accountable for their expenditures. Our government audited accounts are not up to date, with the most recent being in the financial year 2020-2021. Small microeconomies, diseconomies of scale, small government capacity results in delays. I've been reassured that an updating schedule is underway to bring us up to date, but it is important to explain the why. Why? Our current situation is due to inappropriate decentralization of public financial management to government agencies in a small country with limited accounting expertise in the labour market across many government departments, Pāinua Island administrations, and SOEs. These are challenges. However, we're not just sitting on our hands, we need to do something about it. Moving forward, we will centralize public financial management through the Financial Management Information System. We will review and amend the Public Finance Act and align the Financial Policies and Procedures Manual to reflect new processes. We will complete the rollout of the Financial Management Information System across all agencies. And we will continue the investment in the development and retention of critical human capital to support the ongoing PFM. And we will continue to work with development partners in particular, able to provide support, noting our current fiscal constraints. But before I wrap up, I would like instead, once again, to acknowledge the presence of the Right Honourable Helen Clark, for so long a good friend of the Cook Islands, known affectionately both here by us at home and in New Zealand as Auntie Helen. As the Intosai Donor Cooperation Global Goodwill Ambassador for Supreme Audit Institution Independence. That's quite a title, Helen. We are very lucky to have her here with us today. Helen has, of course, shown a particular interest in the good work that SAIs across the Pacific region are doing with regards to strengthening performance, and her passion and expertise in this area can only help pave the way towards better outcomes for both our Pacific SAIs and our Pacific peoples. Helen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to your upcoming remarks. I think that's all for me for now. Once again, to PASAI and to all our PASAI delegates and representatives and others attending today, I wish you all a very warm welcome. I know our Cook Islands audit team will do their utmost to showcase our little paradise and deliver an extra special dose of Cook Islands hospitality for you all this week. With those words, kia ora ana tātou katoa kia manuia.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, the Honourable Mark Brown, Prime Minister of the Cook Islands. Thank you again for those kind words and opening up our discussions today. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome the Chair of PASAI for his opening remarks. Please put your hands together for Satrino Tewit, who will also be handing over the chair to our very own Desmond. Pokarakara mai tātou. Give her a hand.
Kia rana. Before I call upon Nino to come up, first of all, on behalf of PASAI, I would like to thank you, Honorable Prime Minister Mark Brown, for honoring us with your presence and officially opening our Congress. Your presence here today is a testament to your government's commitment to promoting good governance and accountability. Your support is deeply appreciated. I particularly appreciated your comments on accountability and transparency. You said, this will ensure that the public sector is held to account and establish a relationship of trust between government agencies and the people they serve. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights with us today. We wish you, Honorable Prime Minister, all the best in leading your country to better things ahead. We would like to present a small gift to show our appreciation for your presence here. Can we have a hand for the Prime Minister of the Cook Islands? So we have come to the part where we hand over the chairmanship from Saturnino Tewid of Palau to Desmond Wilden of the Cook Islands. Can I have Nino up? And I call upon Nino to the podium. I call upon Desmond to come. According to Section 1, Article 7 of the PASAI Charter, the head of the member hosting a meeting of Congress becomes the chairperson of PASAI upon the opening of the meeting and holds office as chairperson until the opening of the following meeting of Congress. Saturnino Tewid of Palau was the host of the PASAI Congress in 2023. He will now hand over the chairmanship to Desmond Wilden, Director of Audit for the Cook Islands Audit Office, the host of Congress this week. A hand of applause for Nino and Desmond. I would like to call upon the new chairman of the PASAI Governing Board, Desmond Wilden, Director of Audits for the Cook Islands Audit Office, to the podium.
Kia ora tātou katoa. It's my absolute pleasure as the Cook Islands Director of Audit and the now incoming Chairman for PASAI for 2024 to welcome you all here to Rarotonga. I'd like to acknowledge the Uiariki, Komoti Nui, our religious leaders and government representatives, and a warm Cook Islands welcome to all our PASAI delegates and representatives from across the Pacific. Thank you, Honourable Mark Brown, Prime Minister, for your warm and generous words. We are grateful for your support. Thank you to Nino Tewid for your leadership over the last year. You've helped us move us all forward as a PASAI family. It's an honour and privilege to have just been handed the chairmanship for the year ahead. I fully intend to maximise the opportunity for our team and our country. Cook Islands Audit is here for the benefit of Cook Islanders. Our vision is of a high-performing and trusted Cook Islands public sector, which works in the best interests of our people. Our team work to ensure that our people have trust and confidence in government and the public sector. We strongly support good governance, accountability, transparency, and integrity. There is a significant potential here in the Cook Islands with an already well-functioning audit team. Our team seek to lead a culture of collaboration across the public sector. I acknowledge many of our stakeholders here today. A strong public financial management system within the Cook Islands is of utmost importance. To best perform our duties, it is important that we are independent. We are very excited to host the 25th PASAI Congress here this week. Our theme for the week is strengthening performance, making a difference in the lives of our Pacific people. To capture the essence of this important gathering, we've created a bespoke logo to carry us, which you can see behind me. I'd like to take a few moments to explain the significance. The manutai, the seabird, are often symbolic of freedom, migration, and exploration. They represent the journey that the PASAI community is embarking on towards strengthening performance and making a difference to the lives of Pacific people. Just like birds migrate to new destinations, PASAI and its members are moving forward, seeking new horizons and opportunities to improve their performance and impact. Momo unity, highlights the collective effort and collaboration required to achieve our goals. Each individual plays a crucial role in contributing to the overall mission. The Ni'omango, shark's teeth, are often associated with strength, resilience, and protection. They signify the determination and resilience of all our members in overcoming the challenges and obstacles. It also emphasizes the importance of safeguarding the interests and well-being of Pacific people, ensuring protection and empowerment. And lastly, ngaru, waves. Waves are powerful symbols of change, movement, and momentum. Waves can represent the dynamic nature of our journey. They symbolize the ebb and flow of progress, the continuous effort required to drive positive change, and the ripple effects that result from collective action. With the strength and significance outlined to you all, my challenge to you all is to approach the week ahead with energy and vigor, and to embrace the spirit I've just described. It is pleasing to have our Pacific family here together in Rarotonga, to collectively find ways to ensure that we make a difference to the lives of Pacific people. This Congress promises to be a hugely valuable opportunity to deepen relationships. It provides the ability to build considerable knowledge and capability. If there is anything our team can do to make your visit more special, please just ask. We'd love to showcase our paradise and extend a warm Cook Islands hospitality to all our visitors. Our team really wanted to kick off the week strongly and with real impact. So when we considered who we might approach to be our keynote speaker, there was only one name, the Right Honourable Helen Clark. Helen Clark is the Interside Donor Corporation Goodwill Ambassador for PSI Independence. As the Prime Minister mentioned, is quite a title. Helen was also the United Nations Program Administrator. She was the first elected woman to become Prime Minister of New Zealand. Helen served as Prime Minister for 3 terms, 9 years. Helen was also the leader of the Labour Party for 15 years. She is a fierce advocate for independence and believes strongly for fighting what is right or left, depending on your politics. Helen will speak this morning on influencing PSI independence. We are very fortunate that Helen has graciously agreed to travel here to Rarotonga to support the 25th PASAI Congress. She wears many hats and has invites to speak all over the world. So to have her back in Rarotonga after 5 years away is even more special. It is my privilege and honour to welcome the Right Honourable Helen Clark to the stage as our keynote speaker. Please join me in warmly welcoming Auntie Helen.
E nā iwi o te motu, e nā reo, e nā mana, e ngā rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. House of Aoriki, religious leaders, Cook Islands government, kia ora ana, talofa, talofa lava, malu e lalei, whakalofa lahi atu, and warm Pacific greetings to you all. Can I acknowledge Cook Islands Prime Minister, Mark Brown, Leader of the Opposition, Tina Brown, Cabinet Ministers, Members of Parliament, New Zealand and Australian High Commissioners, all other partners, bilateral, regional, multilateral present, and of course, those who bring us here today, Auditors General, public auditors, and delegates and representatives from across the Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, mai taki mata for the wonderful welcome from drummers and dancers, always the case in the Cook Islands. And thank you to Desmond Wilden, Director of Audit Cook Islands, and his team for asking me to come to this 25th Congress of PASAI, held under the theme Strengthening Performance, Making a Difference in the Lives of Pacific People. And thank you, PASAI, too. Of course, it's wonderful to be back in Rarotonga, and I've got so many memories of happy visits here, both on holiday and for official and other reasons. Mark Brown referred to the 2001 visit, which was the 100th anniversary of annexation by New Zealand. I felt a bit embarrassed coming to market, actually, but we signed a new agreement at that time, as you said, and I hope things have never looked back. It's always wonderful to come and see the island, to visit the Takitumu conservation area, as I did again yesterday, and see the work that's being done to keep some of the unique ecology and habitat which the Cook Islands has. But as has been said, I come today with this very long title, Goodwill Ambassador for the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, INTOSAI for short, Donor Cooperation. And I was asked to take on that role to advocate for the independence of supreme audit institutions around the world. And as I'll comment, some come under very great pressure from governments, really great pressure to try and keep keeping their independence. And obviously I have a particular interest in the good work which the public audit officers in our own region are doing to strengthen performance. Sometimes I reflect on what made New Zealand over the years one of the least corrupt and most transparent countries in the world. And that's a reputation you have to keep working at. You can never take it for granted. And I'm convinced that it came from the strength of New Zealand's institutions, its integrity institutions. And of course, the Office of the Auditor General is a critical one of those, as is the Office of the Ombudsman, the offices of the Human Rights Commissioners, and the scrutiny of Parliament and of free news media. If you put all these things together, you shine lights on performance of government and public institutions. And let's be honest, I didn't always agree with every line and every audit opinion, but I'll tell you what, I always respected them. And that's the key thing. You respect what a senior statutory office says. So I was pleased to be asked to contribute not only today, but earlier to the online PASAI Congress in 2021, and then to the webinar in 2022 on building strong national integrity systems in the Pacific region. And it's always great to be able to be here in person, which is possible post the peak of the pandemic of COVID. It's never gone away, by the way, but with vaccines and more knowledge, we're better able to manage. So I see independent oversight of public financial management as part of the absolutely essential checks and balances which must exist in our systems of government. And it's also so important for maintaining the trust of our citizens that government and its institutions will treat them fairly. By providing independent and expert opinion on how governments are using public resources and how government entities are using public resources, our supreme audit institutions are serving such a vital public accountability function. But, of course, and Mark Brown too made this point, they can only perform their tasks well if they are fully independent of those whom they audit. They need that institutional, organisational and financial independence. And that was a very firm principle that was set down by the International Organisation of Supreme Audit Institutions way back in 1977, almost half a century ago, in its Declaration on Audit Principles, known as the Lima Declaration. And since then, several legal instruments have reiterated that call, including 2 United Nations General Assembly resolutions. So this principle is well established in our international law and documents, but it needs to be upheld everywhere. Then in 2007, PASAI, meeting in Mexico, made another declaration on independence of the Supreme Audit Institutions. And it identified the 8 pillars of independence, each of them a benchmark against which we can assess the level of independence that our public audit officers actually have. So let's run through them. The existence of an appropriate and effective legal framework is very important. Our audit office independence should be firmly established in the legislation of a country, and where countries have formal written constitutions, mine doesn't, but so many do, it's good to put it in the Constitution. Second principle is around the independence of the head and the staff of the Supreme Audit Institutions. They need to have security of tenure and be free to act independently of the executive arm of government. So that means it's expected that a head of audit will be appointed or reappointed or removed by a process which is independent of the executive. Then there's the issue of mandate and discretion on how functions are performed. Supreme Audit Institutions should have a broad enough mandate for their investigations, and of course should be free from direction or interference from a parliament, from the executive, in what they select to audit, as well as in how they plan and conduct and report and follow up on their audits. They should have unrestricted access to information, adequate powers to obtain timely, direct and free access to the documents and the information they need. They should have the right and the obligation to report on their work and should never be restricted from reporting the results of their audits. They should have the freedom to decide the content and the timing of the audit reports and when and how and where to publish and disseminate them. They should be able to report directly to parliaments on their audit work and report at any time on any matter which they consider warrants such a report. They need effective follow-up mechanisms on audit recommendations to ensure that they are implemented. And there should be arrangements in place to enable parliaments or their committees, as appropriate, to consider audit reports. In fact, I can say as a member of parliament, particularly an opposition one, the audit reports are absolutely essential reading. But for all parliamentarians, government or opposition, their job is to hold government to account. And the Audit Office report provides independent, impartial information about government spending and operations which parliaments should use, media should use, everyone should use. And finally, in the principles, the Supreme Audit Institution should have sufficient financial, managerial and administrative autonomy to fulfill their mandate. Their budgets need to be set independently of the executive, and they should be free to appoint staff independently. My recollection of New Zealand is the budget was dealt with directly by Parliament, and that's as it should be. So these are great principles, these 8 principles. But let's come to the reality in which our supreme audit institutions work around the world. The evidence we have suggests that only a small proportion of them in developing countries meet these independence criteria. And they often don't have the necessary independence to perform their duties, and the trend is moving in the wrong direction. The PASAI Development Initiative recently published its 2023 Global Stocktaking Report, and it measures and looks at these developments and trends around the world for the audit officers. And for the 3rd consecutive stocktaking report, the independence levels are assessed to have gone down. Access to information by public audit officers continues to fall, and interference in budget, execution, and audit planning has increased. 10% of the respondents to the 2023 survey reported interference against the leadership of supreme audit institutions. Back in 2018, a supreme audit institution independence rapid advocacy mechanism was established by the PASAI Donor Cooperation, which I'm the Goodwill Ambassador for. And this mechanism too is about advocating for independence and raising awareness of threats to and breaches of independence. And it also can try to step in to broker support where the supreme audit institutions are facing challenges to their independence. Analysis of cases which have come to the independence of that mechanism, to the attention of that mechanism, including in Sierra Leone and Ghana in Africa, Poland and Montenegro in Europe, and Colombia and Dominican Republic in Central and South America, are suggesting 2 trends. 1, that threats to the independence of public audit officers are by no means confined to low and middle income developing countries. There are growing reasons to be concerned in some high income countries too, where assumed barriers to corruption and cronyism are coming under pressure. 2, second trend, threats to independence are generally part of a broader set of challenges which are also affecting other independent institutions. And these threats are associated with the deterioration of conditions around accountability, including the shrinking of civic space, which is all too common these days. Witness just one of many examples in our media headlines, the ongoing upheaval in Georgia, in the Caucasus, where the government has just pushed through its parliament Russian-style legislation which restricts civic space. This is very, very concerning. So, how can these bad trends be countered? Well, some of the ways forward could include these, and I'll run through them in a little more detail. But we need global coalitions which will work to advocate for the independence of the audit institutions and raise greater public awareness globally. We need to think about what are the appropriate regional approaches, and we need to think about how the audit officers can be supported at the country level to strengthen support for their actions. So running through these, if we're building coalitions at the global level, we need to be thinking quite broadly about who can be supportive. And of course, and I would say this, the PASAI Donor Cooperation is a very good place to discuss the issues because it's bringing together the supreme audit institutions and the bilateral and other donor partners. There is a Kingston implementation plan which brings people together around this quest to support independence. You have the PASAI Development Initiative, you have the OECD, you have the IMF, who have together launched a global project around independence for SAIs. And it's hoped that this will lead to OECD guidelines on independence of public auditors, which are drawn to the attention of parliaments and ministries of finance. So the OECD pronouncing is very helpful. The global partnership should also be inclusive of civil society, and we have very dedicated civil society institutions like Transparency International, which are the friends of Supreme Audit institutions, and they have broad constituencies where they advocate. And there are other initiatives which are also relevant and which are friends. The way I was drawn to the Goodwill Ambassador role was through my role as chair of the board of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. This is an initiative which works for transparency and good governance in countries with extractive sectors, which are known for vulnerability to corruption, and in many cases for outright corruption, even leading to the undermining of public order and security and outright conflict. And I would recommend that any country with a significant mineral, oil and gas sector or contemplating it should look very hard at joining the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, because its disciplines around disclosure of data of information are extremely important. And we do liaise with PASAI to ensure that public audit officers around the world are aware of EITI, and particularly in countries which are a member, to draw public audit institutions' attention to the EITI data, because it is a very powerful source of data for public audit institutions. On the issue of developing regional approaches in support of SAI independence, well, of course, in the Pacific context, PASAI is alive and well and kicking hard to support the independence of the member organisations, and good relationships and dedicated support from key development partners in the Pacific, like Australia and New Zealand, are extremely helpful. In general, we might say that SAIs in a region might face similar realities and challenges. Not always true, but often is. I know that strengthening the SAI independence was the very first of PASAI's 5 strategic priorities under its 2014 to 2024 strategic plan, that PASAI has supported several public audit officers in asserting independence. And it's been great to see that in Tonga and Tuvalu, there has been landmark legislation passed which strengthens key aspects of the Public Audit Office independence. PASAI has also focused on addressing independence through an integrity lens and facilitating dialogues with other institutions which should be upholding integrity in government, like parliaments, anti-corruption bodies and ombudspersons. And that webinar for PASAI I took part on in 2022 really showed to me how focused Pacific participants are on strengthening that whole integrity ecosystem. I understand that PASAI's new strategic plan, which is due to be adopted at this meeting, is going to build on the achievements of the previous one, and it will help drive efforts to strengthen independence of audit officers in the Pacific, and I hope also support the audit officers to contribute to good governance policy objectives in the jurisdictions they're operating in. Then I come finally to raising the profile of the independence of audit officers at the country level in order to strengthen their legitimacy and support their independence. It's so important to build on the public trust which the national audit institutions have in our countries. A strong reputation is just an intangible asset which the audit officers can draw on if they feel their autonomy is threatened. And in my view, the public audit officers should not feel shy about being proactive in raising their profile. Of course, public trust is enhanced when the audit reports are clearly of good quality and they're timely. And this requires dedicated professionalism from high-quality staff and good management. When I talk about timely reports, I think of the examples of the publication of audits of stimulus packages and other issues like procurements during the COVID-19 pandemic, which many audit officers around the world have published. Not always a happy story, I might say, but it's helped raise the profile of the Supreme Audit institutions which have done that and shown how relevant they are to the proper expenditure of public money. And finally, at the national level, the audit officers can also think about their stakeholder engagement and who they interact with in the integrity ecosystem, which of course is the parliamentary processes, ombudsman's offices where they exist, other such statutory offices, and non-state actors, including in civil society, and I've mentioned Transparency International as one, and the news media. It's good to be hearing that in the Cook Islands, the Audit Office is working with Parliament to strengthen the legal framework and to achieve greater independence, and working with partners across the Cook Islands public sector to keep promoting that culture of accountability and transparency. And Cook Island Audit's vision of a high-performing and trusted Cook Islands public sector which works in the best interests of the people is a great vision. Because ultimately, Cook Islands Audit Office exists for the benefit of all Cook Islanders. It holds a very important place in the integrity system of this country, and a strong public financial management system in the Cooks is of the greatest importance, as it is for every country on earth. Alongside the key stakeholders, many of whom are here today, Cook Islands Audit work to ensure that the people of the Cook Islands can have trust and confidence in what their government is doing and what the wider public sector is doing. This is extremely important. Where that public confidence frays around the world, it clearly leads to very concerning developments because people do get very worried when they don't feel that government is performing in integrity terms as it should. So, in conclusion, the proceedings of this conference are just so important to support the good work of the public audit officers around the Pacific, and of course for reinforcing that case around the importance of independence. Mai take mata, and thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Helen, for those words and for the delivery of our keynote for this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can please ask you to indulge as we reset the stage for the first working part of this morning's program, which is the panel discussion. I'm just going to ask our team to reset the stage. Feel free to get up and stretch your legs. We'll take a 2-minute break as we reset the stage this morning. For housekeeping, for anybody who would like to know where the conveniences are, we have a building just to the outside, the right of the auditorium, if you would like to use the facilities. All right, we'll be back with you in 2 minutes' time.
Kia ora, everyone. Welcome back. Firstly, thank you, Helen, for your impactful keynote address. Personally, quite moved by that. I agree with Helen that we should all adopt an inclusive, all-hands-on-deck approach regarding PASAI independence. With that, I'd like to reiterate 3 points just made. Firstly, being on building global coalitions to strengthen global standards on Psi independence and to create a global awareness on the topic of Psi independence. Secondly, on developing the regional approaches to take into consideration the context in which Psis operate and to create the necessary synergies among regional actors. And thirdly, is raising the profile of independence at the country level to strengthen the legitimacy and support around their actions. And to continue with this impact, we now move on to our panel discussion. Please, can I have back on stage Helen, if you're able to join us on the stage, please. And please, can I call to the stage to take a seat alongside Helen? Can I have Benjamin Fluentes Castro from the Interside Development Initiative on Psi Independence team? Also, can I call upon Esther Lameko Pautor, the PASAI Chief Executive Officer? And also, can I get call out John Ryan, Secretary General of PASAI and Controller and Auditor General of New Zealand. Can I please get a round of applause for our panelists? So just a quick brief. So our panel discussion will be divided into 2 parts. In the middle, we'll take a short break for some light Cook Islands version of morning tea. And then before returning to complete the panel discussion and take questions from the crowd. So I would like to ask everybody to get their thinking hats on should you want to ask a question of our distinguished panelists. Okay, now panelists, I now ask the question, now each of you to take a few minutes to reflect on Helen's keynote address. So John, please, can we start with you?
Kia ora. That's all. You can hear that? Great. Yep. When I was listening, I reflected first on the just really challenging environment internationally. Many of the norms that we've come to know, certainly through my life, of rules-based systems, strengthening democratic processes, protections for those processes, just seem a little bit under siege at the moment worldwide. And I think we've all seen that break out into actual conflicts, but also we see rolling back of protections for people actually across the world in many countries. And I think that comes back to one of the things that PASAI is about, which is us working together, because I think no matter whether you're a strong Psi with good protection or one that's emerging, I think you're both in that environment potentially under threat, either not progressing with your development and your independence and your quality and strengthening your systems, but also if you are a developed Psi, rolling backwards and being put under some strain. So I think it's a very different environment that we're going to go forward over the next 10 years of the strategy with. I really liked, though, the framing that Helen used around 3 levels of international, regional and local and domestic. And I think that really gives you a way of thinking about the complexity of the world in ways that you can actually influence it. And so certainly for me, as I was listening, I thought about my own situation, and regardless of how the world's working or regardless how the region is progressing, I can do a lot within my organisation to raise the profile, to increase its connection to people, and to help maintain and strengthen its capacity and capability. So even in a world where there's lots of challenge and the environment's fluid and moving, I think as individuals we can do an awful lot inside our own organisations to help strengthen things. And I think if you strengthen it locally, then that will flow into the regional and international environment. And I guess PASAI's key theme is Pacific auditors working together, and I think that strength of collectiveness was also coming through. So there's just a few starter thoughts for me, Des. Cheers.
Thank you, John. Sorry, now, can I have Esther? Can you share your thoughts?
I think one of the things that I appreciated from the keynote address is how New Zealanders are working the institutions of integrity in New Zealand to make it work. And one of that is the audit office. So having a strong audit office as an institution is also key to this journey progressing forward in terms of independence. So that's part of the work that we're trying to promote as well in the Pacific sides that we work with, is ensuring that it's built the capability of the office as an institution where they complete quality audits, reports to Parliament, and these reports will be used by Parliament to scrutinize the financial activities of government, and also for everybody, as Helen has talked about. There's nothing that they can talk about if these reports are not completed and submitted to Parliament and discussed and scrutinized by Parliament. So that's one of the key things that I took away from the keynote address this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, finally, Benjamin, what did you take from Helen's keynote?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to IDI. And well, I think that one of the main elements that was mentioned by Helen Clark was the Global Stock Taking Report prepared by IDI, which is a relevant source of information regarding the status of independence of SAIs across the world in different regions. And if I may, I would like to elaborate a bit on this. As Helen mentioned, is for third time, the global measurements of independence shows that there is a decline in the conditions of supreme institutions faced globally, and there are certain concerns specifically on specific principles of the Mexico Declaration. When we talk about independence, we have to acknowledge that the definition of independence must be based on a benchmark, international benchmark well accepted, and that's the Mexico Declaration. And the Global Stock Taking Report reflects how all these principles are working around the world, and we have concern about mainly access to information, and this, of course, has an impact in the way supreme institutions implement their mandate. If you don't have information, it will be very hard to have good audit reports with quality, and the timeliness of audit reports will be also affected. So I think that it's important to bear in mind that we have measurements globally about the status of independence around the world, and also that the Mexico Declaration principle must be the benchmark and the definition over which we can assess and understand our independence across the regions.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for sharing. So we've heard a very clear message from the Right Honourable Helen Clark about the critical pillars of independence and the global, regional and local mechanisms to support SAI independence. Can we now bring our further discussions on this topic by stepping back and considering why independence matters? So my question to each of you on the panel, well, it's three questions all in one. First one is, why does SAI independence matter? And the second one is, what difference can a SAI make if it is enabled to do its job in alignment with the pillars that were discussed? And what is lost when there is no independence? When independence is threatened or the position deteriorates? Maybe can I ask if Esther can start us off?
I think audit independence matters. It is important because without it, PASAI will not be able to be free to do what it's supposed to be doing. PASAI should be free to undertake work that is needed to complete quality audits and to report to Parliament and to the public about its findings or audit results. And this should be done promptly. If information is withheld and reports on financial and non-financial matters are not completed, audits cannot be produced and conducted, and SAIs cannot report freely. If a SAI does not have sufficient resources, audits that should have been done cannot be done, and the SAI cannot report freely. If governments do not table the audit reports, they do not allocate them to appropriate parliamentary committees for their review and scrutiny, the result is the same. So therefore, if independence is compromised, it limits the ability of a SAI to complete quality audits. SAIs cannot deliver their mandates well, and they cannot work well with parliaments and the public in holding the executive government to account.
Sorry, Helen, would you like to share any comments?
I think in addressing the question of why independence matters, I would step back and say that if the public feel that things aren't right in government, that the word starts going around that you can pay this one or that one, whether it's a minister, whether it's a member of parliament, whether it's an official, whoever, that you can jump the queue, you can get what you want. This is completely corrosive of societies and of whole systems of government. And it's so important to know that there are officers that are dedicated to upholding a value system that says that these things are wrong. You don't steal from the public purse. You don't seek preferment outside the rules that are set for the society. And as we've been commenting on, the Controller and Auditor General, whatever the name is from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, is very central to the ecosystem of keeping an eye on these things. There are others, mentioned our ombudsman, even our human rights commissions, our parliaments, if they're doing their job properly, through their committees, through question times, through examination of estimates, whatever. Our news media, our civil society, the whole ecosystem has to be strong. I think New Zealand was long helped not only by having the strong institutions which were respected, but also by a value system. But you can never be complacent. You can never take it for granted that these things are written in stone. And that's why ensuring that the public audit institutions and the other parts of the ecosystem have profile and are noticed and are respected is very important. So, it's often hard to write these things down, but that's what you're dealing with. And as I said, if that public trust in things being done in a right and proper way is broken, it can be very hard to restore it, and you get a lot of cynicism. And cynicism is never good because that drives down participation in the processes which elect government and make it function properly. And then you can go down that slippery slope. I mentioned Georgia. Very interesting, your Prime Minister, Mark Brown, was just in Georgia for the Asia Development Bank meeting, and he told me he saw the big demonstrations, and he was very aware of what's happening in Georgia, where they've started to move in on the civil society space. So if, for example, you're Transparency International in Georgia and you get something like 20% or more of your funding from the international organisation or from a donor, you then have to register as a foreign agent. Well, this is ridiculous. But you can see if the government goes after the civil society organisations, who's it after next? Does it start clamping down on the audit office? Does it start clamping down on human rights? Does it start doing X, Y, Z? So it's a slippery slope. And of course, once the trust is completely destroyed, you can descend into civil war and conflict. Now that's, none of us want to be there. So, let's sort of keep the fence high on the top of the cliff, where we say audit officers and the rest of the ecosystem being independent, being able to call it out, being respected. It's just an essential sort of brick in the wall of what keeps our societies peaceful and non-corrupt.
Thank you, Helen. Now, Benjamin, from your perspective, from we work with IDI.
Yes, well, basically it has to do with the ideas that has already been mentioned here. I think that independence matters in two dimensions. The first one, of course, is the impact of the SAI itself. If the SAI doesn't have independence, it cannot be valuable to the parliament, to the citizens, to itself, I think. But also it has an additional dimension because the lack of independence we have realized, it's also a red flag of institutional matters or institutional risks that are taking place in the country. We have realized through the contact that we have had with different supreme institutions across regions when providing country support regarding independence, we have realized that the connection of independent supreme institution, or there is a connection of independence of the supreme institution with the independence of other organizations, with autonomy for other organizations, and with the check and balances that are working in the institutional framework of the country. And these two dimensions, of course, gives us an idea on how relevant this is to advocate for the independence of SAIs, and also always to take into account the country context, because in the implementation of the Mexico Declaration principles can vary from country to country. When providing advocacy, we have to be aware of this, and we have to come up with the solutions and with the recommendations that fit in with the reality of the supreme institution.
I think they've touched on a lot of the key points. I guess one of the things that we often talk about is our job is to speak truth to power. And the other description that you often hear about auditors general is they're called the public watchdog on taxes and public activities. And I guess we are there to speak truth to power, but power often doesn't like truth. And if you're a public watchdog, I think the public would much rather have an Alsatian than a poodle. And I think the more that you erode the independence, the more likely your public watchdog will not have any, to mix metaphors, no teeth either. That it becomes constrained, either the resources are taken from it, it can't be free to be given appointments or promotions of staff, and it may not be able to report freely either. So the role of speaking truth to power when power doesn't want it, the role of looking after the public's taxes and the effectiveness and efficiency of the public service, you want a watchdog that's actually got the teeth to make a difference. And as soon as you start eroding independence, then you start to lose that. And I think even, I'm in a very privileged position. The constitutional arrangements around my office have been settled for a very long time and respected. But even in my case, when I write, and Helen touched on it, she may not always have liked the reports from the office, previous Auditor Generals, I just want to say. But they were respected. And as an Auditor General, when you put one of those reports out where you're criticising the government, or in cases ministers or even the Prime Minister, you've got to be quite protected to do that. And even in my mind, negative comments from media or from ministers starts to be a bit corrosive around that. And I think even at the edges, it affects the ability of the Auditor General to really be that public watchdog. And so I think from that level, where we're totally independent, through to some of the really constrained independence we've got, you really have a watchdog that really doesn't do its job, the less independent it is.
Thanks, John, for that analogy. So, and then just moving, I'd just like to for the panel, just to move on to our next question. What, in your view, are effective ways to build those partnerships that support this come, as you mentioned before? So, what, in your view, are the effective ways to build partnerships that support PASAI independence? Maybe can we start with Benjamin?
Yes. Well, one of the elements that I think is relevant is what I just mentioned in my previous participation, is to be aware on the relevance of the institutional context of each country. This means that we need to understand the institutions in a broad sense, and also the way the legal framework of the Supreme institutions is designed, but also how it is implemented, because there is a lot of discretion there that can take you to one way or to another. In terms of the institutional framework and institutions, we have created a coalition with OECD, with the International Monetary Fund, and with the World Bank. They have just informed last week that they want to be part of this global project that was mentioned by Helen Clark. We are going to analyze the informal factors in the institutional framework of countries that affect the independence of supreme institutions. These informal factors are unwritten norms or rules and conventions, and also cross-cutting behavioral patterns that affect the interaction of supreme institutions with Parliament and with the executive. Let me give you an example of what these informal factors are. You know, if you work for a supreme institution, you know that during the tenure of a head of PASAI, there is a cycle. That your interaction with Parliament and with the executive at the beginning of your tenure will be different when it is ending. That is a reality in all countries. But there are a lot of unwritten elements that are taking part in this cycle. And we want to understand all these kind of elements that at the end of the day affect the implementation of the Mexico Declaration Principles. That's why in the global project we are foreseeing to collect information on the informal factors through different channels, in country visits, surveys, and we will have a workshop in Istanbul in November to collect information directly from head of PASAI regarding these informal factors. There will be a joint report prepared by IDI, OECD, World Bank, and IMF on these informal factors, and this report will be an input for OECD, as it was mentioned by Helen Clark, to come up with guidelines that will be addressed to the executive and to the legislative. We know that Mexico Declaration is focused on supreme institutions, is addressed to supreme institutions. Now we want to create soft law, which will be addressed on independence, which will be addressed to executive and legislative. And if you allow me, in the case of the implementation of legal frameworks, we have also seen that one of the main elements, institutional elements within the PASAI to safeguard independence are the legal services that the supreme institutions have. So it's very important to understand the legal services, the challenges of the legal services that the supreme institutions have. We have basically two models. We have legal services where the PASAI have a legal unit within the structure. We have also PASAI that have to depend on the legal services of the executive. And we also have legal services that must be hired to private firms. We have all these three elements, but we want to understand, let's say, the benchmarks and the good practices that should be in place in each one of these cases. And that's why IDI has also launched a new initiative which is called the LexSai, from legal side, and we will try to work with all supreme institutions regarding the legal services, which is also a very important element regarding the safeguarding of PASAI independence.
Thank you, Benjamin. So to this question, can I ask for a regional perspective from Esther before shifting to Helen?
PASAI has always been a critical partner to the SAIs, supporting SAIs in their journey to achieve independence. And we have done this in the past, and we continue to support various SAIs in their journeys. But I agree with Benjamin that he has said, you know, different countries have different legislation. So it's critical that we, at the Secretariat, also understand the jurisdiction, the legislation, the constitution, and things particular to a government in that particular country. Say, for example, what's happening in Guam, even though they're the same region, Kiribati and Guam are totally different. So we have to understand the dynamics in those countries to support them. But one of the things that we try our best to build relationship with the SAIs and to encourage them that the journey to achieve independence cannot be done alone, that we're here to support them. We work with other institutions or other development partners working with parliaments, working with civil societies, and we're all part of that ecosystem in promoting independence for the SAI. One of the things that we have done a performance measurements of all the 20 SAIs that we support in the region. And financial independence is one of the fundamental things that are lacking in terms of for the SAIs in the region. And as a result, there's always limitation on the budgets and the financial resources available to the SAIs. As we go around the Pacific, talking to civil societies, talking to parliaments, talking to public service, one of the things that we get is that most people are not, or a lot of huge percentage, do not understand or are not aware of the work of the SAI. So one of the things that we think in the region that we need, and this is why we're doing panel discussions like this, congress, workshops, is to promote the work of the SAI. And this is why I mentioned earlier, it is important to build strong and capable SAIs or institutions doing their reports regularly to Parliament and also doing their own work in their countries to promote them. But one thing is for sure, PASAI is here to support, just like IDI, to support the SAIs in their journeys to achieve independence. Thanks.
Sorry, can I have Helen to share some reflections?
Yeah, well, I've just been reflecting here on how at the national level you could build on the partnerships which audit officers need in this whole ecosystem of the integrity institutions. I think obviously the relationship with the Speaker of Parliament is very important. And I think I'm right, John, in saying in New Zealand the Speaker is almost like your minister in terms of taking care of your budget. So your submission goes through the Speaker, right? So that relationship of trust and speakers being well briefed is very important. I don't know whether these days the audit office is called in to brief new intakes of MPs, but I mean, let's not assume that members of Parliament newly elected even know about an audit office or its function. I mean, it is sort of basic induction, isn't it, to have that briefing from the officers of Parliament, which a Controller and Auditor General is. So where that's not done, obviously it should be. I was thinking also there could be some utility in thinking about national integrity conferences and bringing together, the statutory officers with those, really credible civil society organisations like Transparency International. The media would take a great interest in it and really, be looking at trends in integrity. You could bring a global and regional perspective as well as a national one, but just sort of keep it on the agenda that these issues are important with some kind of annual event. And then I think the outreach via media is very important. And while I was sitting here, I just did a quick check on the Twitter site of the Auditor General of New Zealand, which is good. It's keeping people up to date. We're briefing the committee about this report today. We've just released this report on X. So just, keeping that very straight down the line, factual. This is what we're doing. This is the report we put out. This is some of the findings. Just building that awareness that there is an office there working in the interests of the citizens of the country. So just look at all ways of lifting that profile.
And again, can I get John to round off that question again?
We've now identified our one Twitter follower, so that's good to know. We've gone viral. I think one of the things I thought about on this question was the integrity system of the country, and I think Helen talked about it. It's like a football team. You need all the players on the field. You can't just have a goalie. You can't just have an Auditor General. You need Parliament to do its role. You need the media to be active and independent. You need the judiciary to be playing its space, civil society, the executive, etc. And I think as an Auditor General, when you sort of sit in that landscape, you've got to say, do people know what your part of that landscape is? Are you the goalie or are you the striker? And what's your role? And I think Helen touched on it again, making that clear. The number of times I've been interviewed and the interviewer starts by saying, well, as Attorney General, what's your view on something? And I kind of say, well, I'd like to appoint some judges, and no. We've got, there isn't a high profile, and most people don't know what audit is. And so while I've got a really settled environment for the office, the profile of the office in itself is low. And also the impact of the office, if we sit there by ourselves sort of pushing reports out, is never going to be sufficient to do the watchdog role. So we've spent a lot of time in the office trying to build connections and relationships, working jointly to the extent an auditor can with others. But one of the most effective things we did to build a partnership effectively with Parliament was to be very simple in what we're expecting Parliament to do for us. And our push in that space has been around performance information from the government and how easy it is to judge performance. But we've also established audit and risk chair forums up and down New Zealand and local and central government. We've got a Raupu Māori, we've got a central and local government advisory group. I put out an Auditor General's update once a quarter on all the work we've done and what I think people should be thinking about. And then just to pick up the very last point Helen made, we did actually launch a Public Sector Integrity Day last year, which was really bringing the voice of independents, academics, international voices to the New Zealand public sector about the modern challenges of integrity in a very challenging environment fiscally and politically for many countries, just bringing those challenges home to New Zealand and seeing what reflections we can make. So I think building as many friends as you can is kind of what I think it will underpin over time partnerships and awareness of the work of the office.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for your contributions. And the final question, we would just want to flip this. One of the challenges that we've heard in our recent months that we've discussed addressing the legislative framework here in the Cook Islands to align it to international best practice is the question. Now this question I want to ask this to Esther and John. The question that keeps coming up is, who audits the auditors? Esther and John, could you please help us to understand what control mechanisms are there to ensure the auditor is also held to account?
Well, no one likes to be held to account, least of all Auditors General, so, no, that was a joke. Please strike that from the record. Look, I did write down the number of ways I'm held to account, and it gets quite long, so I'll just go through it. As Helen said, I go to Parliament twice a year to reflect on my budget and my performance. That's the same as every other government agency in New Zealand, but I'm done through a special committee which looks after officers of Parliament. And so they will consider my budget, they'll consider my performance against my performance information, and they will interrogate me on whatever's on their mind. Strangely, I'm also called into the Finance and Expenditure Committee to have exactly the same conversation, so I'm not sure if that's an anomaly of the system, but I do it twice, so that's fun. My financial statements are independently audited by an auditor that I do not use, and that's quite hard to find because I use most large audit firms in New Zealand, but we've got one firm that we've separated from the work that we ask people to do. In terms of other ways of judging us, we measure whether our recommendations have been accepted by Parliament, by public entities. We survey public entities to say whether we are giving them information that's useful and what they think of us. We survey the chairs of parliamentary committees once every 2 years in an in-depth interview. And we survey members of the public as well and ask them whether the office is delivering on matters they're interested in. Separately, I know different audit officers have different arrangements, but at my midterm, which is 3.5 years, I also commissioned an independent review of the office, which I tabled in Parliament, and overseeing that review was the Auditor General of Australia, an ex-head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, a Maori elder, and a commercial director. And they oversaw that review, and they were prepared to talk to it in Parliament and the review of the office. So quite a lot of mechanisms in there. But I think the key point that you've introduced, Des, is independence does not mean not accountable. In fact, quite the opposite in many ways. You've been given a great privilege in the system, and you should be held accountable for holding that privilege for the period of time you're an Auditor General. And it certainly weighs heavily, I think, on most Auditor Generals' minds that they get their term and they must use it for the good of the people.
Well, this is a question that every country that we go to, and we talk to people about independence in the Pacific, they would always say, why should they get independence? But as John has said, when independence is given, the level of accountability is higher for the audit office. So just like every process, you lead by example. When you're given independence to access financial resources, there has to be accountability on the part of the PASAI. And how do you do that? John has explained how they do it. You take your work plan to Parliament with your budget. You tell them this is. Then there should be processes and systems in the PASAI, financial and the financial processes in the system. And we also do that support to the size of how you can account for the financial resources that you get from Parliament. And after the year, you should report on time, whatever the time limit of the financial statement of government audits, because most of the countries in the Pacific, it's always 6 months, 8 months, 12 months after balance date. You have to report to Parliament. So the PASAI should follow exactly the same, report to Parliament and, like John, get your accounts audited by an external. And the good thing about the Pacific Islanders, you can get an auditor from Australia or New Zealand to do this for the PASAI, so that you, the PASAI of the Pacific, can lead by example of all the institutions in your country. This is how you do accountability. That's how I would deal with it.
Yeah. Thank you, John and Esther, for your contributions. Now, soon we'll take a break for a light morning tea. We'll then come back and finish off our panel discussions. That's the segments where you can ask questions of the panel. But before we break for morning tea and say our grace, I'll just please can I ask John to bring a vote of thanks to our keynote speaker.
Kia rana, ngā mihi kia koutou, ko John Ryan, tōku ingoa. Acknowledge the House of Arihi, the Religious Advisory Council members, the Honourable Mark Brown, of course, and the members of the Cook Island Parliament. Acknowledge you all. And also for your generous and warm welcome to us all here today. It's been fantastic to be here in the beautiful Cook Islands, but also setting this Congress off on such a positive note. I've really appreciated this morning the welcome you've given us. It is a pleasure and an honour, actually, to say a few words of thanks to our keynote speaker, the Right Honourable Helen Clark. And I just want to sort of go off script a bit here and just say, first of all, she's a good sort. And the reason I say she's a good sort is we were out for dinner last night. Wonderful cultural show. But next to us was two tables, I think, of people that had got there, let's just say, a lot earlier than us and probably had been drinking a lot longer than us. And they were having a Barbie-themed birthday party. I think they were, I'm not sure if they were Australian or New Zealand, but they were Kiwis. And once they spotted the Right Honourable Helen Clark, she was in sort of selfie mode for about half an hour when she was surrounded by Barbies and Kens, and they were all getting selfies taken with her. So maybe I'll remember a lot about this Congress, but one thing I will certainly remember is what a good sort our Goodwill Ambassador is for taking part in many selfies. But look, I think just this morning, the world is a challenging place. I've said it already, environmentally, economically, geopolitically. And pretty much all of those issues are front and centre for people here in the Pacific. There's challenge everywhere. And in that world, I think the role of Auditors General is extremely vulnerable. Even in good countries, we have very few friends and lots of people that are out to sort of limit the role of the office, and very few supporters. Therefore, I think it's really incredibly significant that we have a global leader of such high standing as our Goodwill Ambassador. I won't attempt the full title, but Goodwill Ambassador for PASAI and for PSI independence. It's significant for us, but I think it's significant for others to see it as well, and I very much appreciate that. I did look up famous Helen Clark quotes, and there's quite a few pages of them, so nothing too embarrassing, I would say. But one I really liked was, I'm not into power for the sake of it. I'm not into power for the sake of it. So it's not just about what you're doing in power, but it's why you're doing it in power. So why is it that we want strong SIs? Why is it that we want independence for SI? And I thought the best way of capturing that was a very famous whakatauki, or a saying from a Māori elder in New Zealand. Hei aha te mea nui o te ao, hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata. And it translates as, what is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. So Helen, we thank you for your support for SIs here and for across the world. Definitely your words of insight and encouragement this morning. But most importantly, I think, for the spirit of what you do and its focus on the well-being of the people in the countries of the world. So thank you for that. Kia ora ana tātou katoa katoa.
Okay. So can I just get all us to bow our heads in prayer? So Father in heaven, thank you for bringing us here safely today, and we ask that you continue to bless us and bless the food and drink that we're about to partake in. Amen.